Well, good day to you. It happens to be January the 25th, 2021, and I hope you're having a great day wherever you are. Now, my name is Gary Willing, and welcome to Search for Signs. Now, I know for those who have been listening to these videos, it might get a little old that I keep doing a little introduction before I get into the main part of the video, but bear with me or fast forward through this if you don't want to hear it again, but I think it's important for me to keep giving a little introduction for those who are perhaps finding this channel for the first time. But what we talk about here is we've had over 300 videos where we talk about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom and why are they returning now. We also talk about who and what Maitreya is and who and what Maitreya is not. We tie it into the current events of the time, which is pretty much the problems that humanity has been facing day in and day out, and it continues to mount to the point of it seems rather hopeless that we can even solve those problems. But never fear. Maitreya, the world teacher, says the problems of the world are real but solvable. Man must act and implement its will. So we can solve the problems if we just act on it. We just haven't been acting on it. That's the problem. We've been procrastinating. Now, we also look at the signs, the miracle signs that have been going on all around the world in all walks of life, to the religious and the non-religious, for decades. And we talk about how it's evidence of hope. There's actually evidence of hope out there. So if you're feeling rather down about the world because you've been watching the news and that's pretty much all you're seeing is just a bunch of Debbie Downers on the TV, do some investigation. I have links all in the video. You can see, and do your own investigation on these signs and come up with the truth for yourself or not if there is evidence of hope. But there's miracles all over the world. They've been happening to every walks of every religious folks, people of religion and people of no religion. Weeping icons, Hindu milk miracle, lights over Jerusalem, UFOs, crop patterns made by UFOs, angel sightings, disappearing hitchhikers. I mean, patterns of light, crosses of light in the windows. Do you want me to keep going? Weeping icons, there was a girl in Lebanon whose tears were razor sharp diamond kind of things, that were one of the many signs, so there's just signs all over the place. If you just look, the teacher said, those who search for signs will find them, so search for them. You'll find them. No, the other thing too, is we talk about the priorities of Maitreya, the need for peace and so forth. And that's really the most important thing. So if you're not so concerned or about who and what Maitreya is or the masters, that's fine. You know what I mean? It's not about changing your spiritual beliefs in order to listen to these videos. It's really about understanding that maybe possibly what the teacher is saying is true, that our survival as a people will depend on whether we create peace or not. But then how do we do it? How do we create peace? Well, he puts it very simply. Without sharing, there could be no justice. Without justice, there could be no peace. Without peace, there could be no future. And real quick, if you look at the Marshall Plan, which happened right after World War II, this will give you an idea of what the principle of sharing really should look like. But the United States gave the excesses that were sitting there doing nothing or going bad and freely gave it to Western Europe to help rebuild Europe after World War II. It did an amazing job of doing that. The Europeans were able to, stabilize the unrest, feed the people, rebuild their houses, their schools, their buildings, their factories, their roads, their bridges, that kind of thing, turn the lights back on, that kind of stuff. Got back on their feet, and then, of course, they started to create excesses, and they gave the excesses back to the United States as payment for what they initially took. It created an economic boom in the United States, an economic boom in Western Europe. But here is the thing. And this is historical evidence that the principle of sharing will bring about peace, is 70 or so years after George C. Marshall, the Secretary of State under President Truman, instituted the Marshall Plan, which was the first time the principle of sharing ever took place. The United States has more of a friendly relationship and a more of a peaceful relationship with those nations than we do with any other nations on the planet. So we have never once attacked France, Germany, the Netherlands, England, Ireland, Spain, Italy. We've never attacked those countries since we did the principle of sharing, now have we? So it did bring about peace. And what Maitreya is advocating is that we do this on a global scale. So anyway, all right, now let's get on into it. Now, I do have some questions and a couple comments to cover in this video. If you have a question, what I would recommend is just posting your question as a comment. And then in the next video, I try to answer that, okay, as best I possibly can. All right, now, first question says, I like the video. How does one become a master? Whew, take some bucks. I'm just kidding. When did Maitreya become a master, and what will the masters do when they come out? Okay, so how does one become a master? Well, you're not asking a master. You'll have to ask the masters themselves when you see them. But I'll give you a little hint, or that you can kind of start looking at this. One thing is that when Maitreya is out, known for who he is, he's going to start to teach humanity the art of self-realization. It's a very simple process where we regain the truth that we are not the physical body, not the emotions, not the mind, but we are something else. We are the self. We are what's witnessing all that. So it's going to start with that. So what will the masters do when they come out? That's one of the things that Maitreya will talk about. But if you read your Bible, the New Testament, there were 5 events that happened to Jesus that were written in such a way that symbolize the 5 steps that each one of us will have to take in order to become a master, and the 5 steps that each master already took to become a master. So it really is, and the other parable that Jesus talked about, which was a symbol for the path of return, was the prodigal son, is the path that we're all taking back to the source. But the first event was the birth of Jesus, that was written in a way that symbolized the first great expansion of consciousness that somebody would take to become a master. And then after many, many lifetimes, they might be 15 or 20 or 5 or 6 or whatever, just depends on the person. They then take the second initiation, which was symbolized in the Bible as the baptism, which means they're now able to, well, the first initiation symbolizes control of the physical vehicle and the physical nature in there of the physical body. The second initiation marks the control of the emotional or desire nature. And then the third initiation was symbolized in the Bible as the transfiguration, and the fourth, the crucifixion, and then the fifth, the resurrection. So after the fifth initiation, the person becomes what is known as a master, where they're free from the pull of matter entirely. They know nothing but love. They have no more faults, but yet from the master's point of view, they're just starting out at that point. So from our point of view, they're perfect and they're perfected members of humanity, but from their point of view, they're just beginning. So they have an infinite path ahead of them. So, but the masters will tell us that we are potential masters. We are the potential, because we're all souls in incarnation. So not one of us is exempt from being a master at some point. So hopefully that helps. Now, when did Maitreya become a master? He was the first member of our humanity to become a master. And he did it millions of years ago, somewhere around the middle of the Atlantean civilization. Chose to stay here. Not all the masters that become masters when they become a master choose to stay on this planet and help. Some go off to higher planets or higher solar systems, but he chose to stay here. And then he will stay through, he's been the world teacher for the last 2,500 years, and then will eventually be he's the world teacher for this age, of the age of Aquarius, which he will be known for who he is, out into the world. He will be a central figure in the life of all humanity for the next 2,500 years. Won't die, won't age, nothing. But he'll be teaching humanity moment to moment, day in and day out, traveling in the world. We will all see him for ourselves. We'll all probably meet him, that kind of thing, over the coming time. And we will look at him as our eldest brother, our biggest brother that we have. And that's pretty much it. Nothing where he is doing anything that we won't eventually do ourselves. But Maitreya is not only able to manifest the love nature of God, he took it one step further and actually learned how to embody the love nature of God. So that's what makes him a Christ or in the esoteric view of what a Christ is, just as the Buddha is also a Christ. Not all masters are Christs, but all masters can manifest the love nature of God. But there's only two masters on this planet, the Buddha and Maitreya, who can manifest the love nature of God on the planetary level. So now Maitreya will be here for the next 2,500 years, and then he'll go off to higher work, and then the master who was John will be the world teacher for the next age, the age after that, and so forth. And then millions of years from now, when the last person of humanity becomes perfected, Maitreya will come back and finish it off and take the last of the initiations that we can take on this planet. So in the Bible, when Jesus said, I am the Alpha and the Omega, that was actually Maitreya speaking through him, saying he was the first to take the initiation for humanity, and then he'll come back and be the last of humanity to take the last and final initiation. So hopefully that's informative. All right, so, and what will the masters do when they come out? Initially, they're going to help us rebuild our world and help us to avoid future pitfalls and future crises and so forth. But some of the masters will be teachers. Some masters will be working with governments. Some masters will be working with artists. Some masters will be working with the beautification of our cities. So it just depends on what their purpose is. Other masters will be working with the United Nations on the principle of sharing directly, so they'll be working within that agency to make sure that the principle of sharing goes off swimmingly. So, there's going to be probably a few dozen masters, all with different work out there. The Master Jesus, his role will be heading the Christian church. So, anyway. Which leads me to the next question. Was Muhammad a master too? Or Ali ibn Abu Talib? I don't know about the second person. Muhammad was not a master when he was Muhammad, but he is a master now, and he is here on this planet. So if you want to know how to become a master, you'll have to ask. He'd be one that you could ask. But he will be one of the masters that will eventually come out along with Maitreya, I think, from what I understand it. But Muhammad was a very advanced disciple when he was Muhammad. The work of the Quran, the writing of the Quran, was not coming from him. It actually came from the Master Jesus. So Jesus, who lived in Palestine 2,000 years ago, died on the cross, rose from the dead, of course, and then his next incarnation, he came back as Apollonius of Tyana, and then became a 5th degree initiate and became a master himself. Chose to stay here on this planet along with those other masters. Muhammad was one of the disciples that worked with Jesus, and Jesus overshadowed him and gave him the writings of the Quran, just as Maitreya gave the writings of the Christian church to Jesus. So I know it might create a little bit of confusion in the minds of people, but esoterically that's what happened. So Muhammad, from the master's point of view, was a man of peace. Any reference to him being a violent or a militant type of personality, that's all man-made. There was no truth to any of that. So there's, of course, distortions about Muhammad as there's distortions about Jesus. So, but in truth, he was a man of peace, from what the master said. Now, lastly, this is going to lead me to not only commenting about a comment, but I also want to read one of Benjamin Creme's master's article, just a brief part of it in reference to what this person said. But Zen, who's becoming a friend of mine through this channel, wrote, there was a great... Oh, and I'm sorry, this is a different one. Sorry about that. Hearing Amanda Gorman's poem at Biden's inauguration was like hearing Maitreya speak. And I agree. I have never been... This is what I wrote. I have never been so glad to be wrong. I was talking about the fact that I had made a comment that I didn't think that Trump was going to leave, or there was a strong possibility that Trump was not going to leave. So I was kind of half right, half wrong, I guess, because I told her in a comment months ago that I was not going to relax about the election until Trump was totally out of the White House. So, and he came close, I think, to retaining power. Had he kind of started earlier, I think he could have done it. I mean, he was really working behind the scenes nonstop to do whatever he could to subvert the election. I do want to say this, okay, because I do think her poem was very inspiring, and I do think Biden's speech was very inspiring too. And this is irregardless of politics. So I know there are people who listen to this channel who don't agree with my political view, and that's fine. I don't agree with everybody's political view either, and that's fine. We can agree to disagree on this, but I got the mic, so I get to talk. Most of the time when people in my life, when they talk about their political views, like some of my cousins and so forth, I just smile and nod. So you might just be smiling and nodding at me as far as I'm concerned. Now, I was not a Biden fan during the primaries. Bernie Sanders was always my guy. I might be perhaps a little progressive for America. I think my opinion of Americans might be a little higher than they have of themselves, kind of thing. Now, I did remember something that Maitreya said. This is I was reminded of this when Biden got when he was going through the inauguration, and I heard his speech. And Maitreya said some years ago that the political environment is so divided that it's going to more and more leaders in the future will be more centrist. And this isn't just in the United States; this is all over the world. And those leaders will be the ones that will mainly be elected. Because if you're too far to the left or too far to the right, you're not going to get enough votes to get get into office. So he's very much of a centrist candidate. Now, the thing that I want to say, a couple things. One, he talks about the soul of this country a lot. That was what he said his purpose is the soul of this country. And he might not be speaking about it this way, but there is a lot of truth to what he's saying. Okay, so esoterically, each country has a soul and a personality. The only time the United States manifested its soul quality, which is the love nature, the love wisdom ray of the second ray, was when George C. Marshall instituted the principle of sharing right after World War II. That was the only time that we've ever done it. Every other time that the United States has given aid to another country or this, that, and the other, it's always been through their personality, which is a devotional ideal aspect. So the sixth ray, which is the ray of idealism, is a divine ray, but the way that humanity has been manifesting up to this point, it creates a very strong, potent individuality, self-deception, idealism to a fault, that kind of thing. So, the United States has always had this ideal of freedom, but never really lived up to it, right? That's one thing. But for Biden to be talking about the soul of this nation, wanting to reinstitute this soul, I know he's talking about seeing the divisions, and the divisions that are going on in the country it's part of its personality. It's not its soul coming out. And I started listening to Biden differently over the past few weeks. And again, I don't agree with him 100% on everything. So, I'm not just, now 100% on the Biden bandwagon. But if he could see that the principle of sharing will bring about the soul quality of this country, then he might be the president that needs to be in office right now. The other thing that is interesting to note about Joe Biden, and this is going to lead me to talk about one of Benjamin Creme's master's article, just a little bit, called about detachment, because he actually did it exactly what Benjamin Creme's master said to do when somebody comes after you and criticizes you. And when evil strikes, the best thing to do is nothing, just to let the aggressor do its thing. So I'm going to read this. It'll make more sense to you in the end. But Trump, right after the election, and even before the election, was throwing all these falsehoods and all these lies at Biden, and Biden never bit. He never swung at a pitch in the dirt. He just ignored it, right? And it was getting to the point where I was kind of frustrated with Biden. And I remember spouting off to my family, friends, and coworkers saying, if I was the president, if I was Biden, I'd be saying this about Trump, and I'd be attacking him in this way, right? And it felt good to say it, but at the same time, every time I watched Biden on TV, he didn't respond. And even in the the debate, Trump was acting like a total ass and was just going off the deep end, and attacking Biden. And Biden just stood there and smiled. Eventually he said, why don't you just shut up, man? But I mean, there's only so much anybody can take, right? But My point is, since the election, Trump's been out there tweeting and, speaking to his base and so forth and the news media that the election was a fraud, it was a hoax. He was calling for Biden to get arrested and so forth. And Biden never responded. Never. And it might have frustrated you along with me, but when you listen to when I read Benjamin Creme's master's article about detachment and what to do when evil strikes, he did exactly what Benjamin Creme's master was advocating to do. So I'm actually quite interested to see what's going to happen under this Biden administration. We might be in for some interesting times, because he might, with his concern about the soul of the nation and the way that he reacted, or lack thereof, to somebody like Donald Trump just throwing lies his way the whole time, and he never once responded to it. He might be a lot more in tune with what we need to have as a world leader than I thought originally. So I might have been wrong about him. So anyway, I do want to read this. Hopefully you've listened to it this long, but if you listen to this, and not only how we all can do this, but also the way that Biden did not fall into the trap of responding to Trump's lies. Let me put it like that. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. There can be few, especially in the Western world, who are unfamiliar with this ancient Christian maxim. Passed down the generations from adult to child, it has found its way into the moral framework of countless millions. However, despite this long conversance, there are relatively few who appear to understand its meaning, and even fewer who live its wisdom. Essentially, it concerns detachment. The evil, the criticism, destructive gossip, and actions which abounds in most so-called quote-unquote spiritual groups succeeds in its intent where there is no detachment. Its bitter and corrosive venom flourishes where it is given the energy of constant thought and defense. Better by far it is to leave it to the karmic law than to brood and fret against its source. This being so, it matters not the nature of the evil, the intended harm. The law is impartial and works to restore equilibrium. No manner of struggle to right a wrong or defend a reputation can better the law of karma in its task. Save then your energy for better things and let the law decide the measure and the timing of response. When evil strikes, the best defense then is detachment. When the hunted animal stands silent and still, the hunter, baffed, goes empty-handed. When a man is detached, free from fear and the need to retaliate, he can calmly leave the great law to fight his battle for him. Thus the evil gains not, nor waxes in strength. This profound teaching of the Christ is usually expressed as an injunction against carrying injury or hurt from day to day, thus prolonging its life and further hurting the victim. This relates closely to the Christian concept of forgiveness. When a man is truly detached, he is already forgiven. He waits patiently for the originator of the evil to realize the harm he does to himself, the victim, and the group, and to make amends. Thus is the evil blunted, and thus it, quote-unquote, sufficient unto the day. When Maitreya, the great Lord, emerges fully and publicly, he will devote much time to the concept of detachment. Not for nothing is it central to his teaching. He has already given his thoughts on honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment. Not all at first will be able to follow his thoughts, but in time his energy of love will awaken men to the practicality of his wisdom. Gradually, the old mechanical reactions of hate and envy will disappear as the social needs are met, as more and more are lifted up by the joy of working for Maitreya's cause. Thus will it be, and thus will people of all nations grow in stature as emerging gods. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.